Hello and welcome to Diving Head-First. This week I'm going to show you how to make one of these. This one I actually bought at Target. It's made by one of the hair brand companies like Goody or something like that. And I've always wanted to make one of these. I have a ton of pins on Pinterest on how to make different ways to make these. And I just saw this at the store, so I decided to pick it up. And it actually fit my head really well, and it works really well, but I wanted it in a bunch of different colors and stuff, so I decided to use this one as a template to make a template of my own to make out of a bunch of different fabrics that I wanted to make headbands out of. So this will be how to turn this into this. It's purple and white polka dot fabric. It's my favorite fabric. I found it like a year ago at Joann's and I've made a bunch of stuff out of it since then. So this was definitely the first fabric that I was going to make into this headband. And you get to see how I do it in this video. So let's get started. For this project you will need about 1/4 yard of fabric, wire cutters, wire. I got plastic coated ones. It's a gardening kind of wire that I just found on Amazon. But I'm sure you could use other types of wire. You just need to have a decent gauge where if you bend it a bunch that it won't break. Ruler. You need scissors, both normal scissors if you're making the pattern just to cut paper, and fabric scissors for when you're cutting fabric. Washable and/or dissolving markers to mark your pattern and/or your fabric, an ironing board or an ironing mat. I use a mat because I don't have space for an ironing board. That's what you see here. And an iron. What you also do not see here is a sewing machine or thread and needle, depending on what you choose to use or have. I have a sewing machine and I'm not very good at hand sewing, so I use a sewing machine in this video. But you can definitely do this with just hand sewing. And optional supplies if you want to make a template, which I like doing if I'm going to be making multiples of something, or if I just want to work out the measurements before marking fabric. I suggest paper and, for this one, tape, so that you could tape together more than one piece of paper to get the appropriate length for this template. As I'm basing my template off of a headband that I already have, I'm using that as to begin my sketch for my template. So I'm just quickly going to mark around the edges, and then I'm going to use a ruler to straighten out the lines and figure out proper measurements. Once I have all the markings made, I'm going to just make straight lines at the 3 sections that I need to have straight lines, at the bottom, the middle, and the top. I measured the headband and it was about 2 inches wide, so I did 2 inches from the bottom line to make the middle line, and then another 2 inches from the middle line to the top line, so a total of 4 inches wide. And that is how I came up with the measurements for the lines. To make the angle of the point, I just lined up 2 points on the top and the bottom line, and then from those 2 points I used the ruler to go to the top of the center line. Once I got the basic shape, I decided to add a 1/2 inch of seam allowance on all sides. So then I just went around the whole entire pattern, adding a 1/2 inch. After I added the seam allowance, the total length of the lines, the long lines, the length of the center line was 33.5 inches, and the exterior, the top and bottom lines, were 32 inches. If you want to go based on my measurements. Depending on the size of your head, you might need a different measurement. Once you're done with your seam allowance, cut your pattern out with your paper scissors. Now you could lay out your fabric. Make sure it's smooth and with the wrong side up. Place your pattern on it and trace your pattern onto your fabric. Once you're done tracing your pattern, you can remove your pattern and cut your fabric with your fabric scissors. Wrong side, right side, wrong side. Now take your ironing board or ironing pad out because you're going to fold the fabric in half, wrong side out. This way it will stay the shape that you want and you don't need to pin it in order to sew it. If you're hand sewing, you might want to pin it instead of ironing, or if you don't have an iron. Now we sew down the long side and one of the short sides. I'm using a sewing machine, but as I said before, you can do this hand sewing. I just prefer to use my sewing machine. Make sure to leave one side open because that's where you're going to put in the wire. When sewing, I left a ½ inch of a seam allowance just because that's what I preferred to do. Also on the short side, I went back and forth with my stitch once just to make sure to lock it in. Now cut the excess fabric of your seam allowance. I personally left about probably like 1/8 of an inch, but that's up to you. The closer you cut to the seam, the less bulk there will be when you turn your fabric right side out. Now that you cut off the excess fabric, you want to turn your piece right side out. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. This is just the way I did it. It was late. It's not the most efficient, but it got the job done. When you turn it right side out, make sure to pull out the point, but you don't need to be perfect with this. Once you're putting the wire in, you can kind of fix that with the wire. You could use the wire to push out the point. I decided to iron my fabric before I put the wire in just to make it a little bit crisper and so that it was just a little bit flatter, but that is a totally optional thing. Now that your fabric is ironed and all flat and pretty, take your wire cutters and your wire, take the end of the wire and make a loop so that you don't have a pointy end sticking into the fabric, so that it's like a soft curve. Just wrap it around a little bit so that you make sure that it just stays in place. And then put the wire into your fabric and make sure it gets all the way to the corner. This is where you could push out that point that I was talking about before, if you need to. Pull your fabric straight and then cut the wire a couple inches past where your fabric ends. Take that extra wire and loop it back, just like you did at the beginning. Now fold back your fabric so that you can sew your fabric closed. I used a sewing machine for this part, and then I did like a 1/4 inch like white border detail on mine, but you could also hand stitch this closed and to make it like an invisible seam. I was just lazy and I just wanted to use the sewing machine, so that's why I just decided to make it a decorative border. Now that your headband's done, you can just, the way that I prefer to style it is I thread it underneath my hair like this with my hair already pinned, because so that it just doesn't need to depend on the headband to stay in place. And then I just loop it, hook it on either side, and then voila! And then maybe bend this a little bit until it's at my liking. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. I'm sorry about the video quality. I'm working on getting lights. Obviously, I've gotten a ring light for when I'm talking to the camera, but that doesn't always work when I'm shooting the actual DIYs. I'm getting a lighting kit though. So, please check in and comment below if you want to see more videos like this. And yeah, see you guys later.